Hi, this is the video for Daf Shevui, Daf Kaf Het of Masechet Ketubot. This is the last daf of the second chapter. So if you're with us and you hung with us until this point, congratulations, you've made it through 27 pages. Note, we're on page 28, but only 27 pages of Masechet Ketubot. So it's a great job. You've done wonderful stuff, and I urge you to keep learning. Next chapter is challenging. Be warned, but don't be warned so much that you run away from it. Keep up the good work. In any case, I just thought I'd make a little small note, something of literary historical interest here. Very rarely is the Talmud self-reflective on itself as literature. In other words, most of the time we have discussions of by Amoraim, by Tanaim, by the anonymous voice in the Talmud, the Stam. We have a lot of debates, but very rarely does a rabbi or does the Talmud acknowledge that this is a composed piece of literature or refer to a composed piece of literature, be it in writing or be it orally composed. And I do believe that all of Talmudic literature was orally composed until the Gaonic period from, let's say, the 8th to the 10th, 11th centuries. But in our sugya is one of the rare cases where we do have a rabbi referring to a composed work. And it is especially rare because of a case where a rabbi refers to a composed work that is not the Mishnah, that is not the Tosefta, and is not one of the Midrashic collections that we know about. And what we have here on Daf Kaf Het, Amar Rav Nachman, Tana be'evel rabati. So we can learn a lot from this term. First of all, Rav Nachman says it is taught, right, and he uses the term for Braita, which means a Tanaitic source, in Evel Rabati, the greater book about mourning, or the greater work. I shouldn't say book, I should say work about mourning. So what can we learn from this very term, and what can we learn from about its later history as a composed piece of literature? First of all, the fact that he calls it by a name, and then he subsequently clarifies that name, means that there are probably two works. One that is called Evel, or the small book of mourning, and the other one that is called Evel Rabati, the greater, longer work of mourning. Otherwise, he probably would have just called it Evel itself, right? Tana be'evel, or something similar to that. And we do know, and in post-Talmudic periods, there are two books. One of them called Smachot, which means rejoicing celebrations, and one of them called is Smachot de Rabbi Chia, the tractate of Smachot written or composed by Rabbi Chia. We are not sure at all whether or not the work referred to by Rav Nachman and referred to in a couple other places in the Talmud is to be identified with the later Smachot, the book called Smachot that was known by later post-Talmudic rabbis. In fact, there's ample evidence that the quotations from this book Evel, or Evel Rabati, as they appear in the Talmud, are not indeed the same as that later book that appears in Jewish history, Smachot. But that's true, by the way, also of the Tosefta. There are times when the Gemara refers to the Tosefta, and it doesn't appear in our Tosefta, meaning the Tosefta that has made it handed down generation to generation, eventually committed in writing, and that we have in front of us today. As far as the dating of this book, Evel Rabati, I think many scholars currently think that there was such a tractate in the time of the Mishnah itself. The Mishnah has very little information about mourning practices, which is the topic of Evel, which means mourning, or smachot, which is a euphemism. Smachot means happiness, rejoicing occasions, but it is a euphemism for sad mourning occasions. So there is solid evidence that there was a tractate about Evel in the time of the Mishnah, but it worked a little bit different than the Mishnah. The language seems to be a little bit different. The structure perhaps is a little bit different. It is not edited and it is nowhere referred to as a real Mishnah, although some of the Gonim later do refer to it as a Mishnah, but that's probably because its style is somewhat similar to the Mishnah and is not at all similar to the Talmud. But even if this tractate is ancient from the time of the Mishnaic period, it seems to have been open to more emendations, more additions, more accretions of material over the centuries for various reasons which I'm not going to get into, than was the Mishnah. So the Masechet Smachot that we are familiar with today is probably vastly different than the Masechet Tractate Evel that was quoted to us in our sugya by Rav Nachman.